Hello, welcome to Texas Lone Wolf Channel. We're going to dive into most controversial topic. What happened in the 20th century shook the world and shook it by the storm. All right. I don't know how many of you remember this ship. It was built in somewhere either in Ireland or somewhere in UK, but it had Liverpool written on the back, and it had a Union Jack flag in the back. And it was commanded by White Star Line. Okay? We're going to talk about the effects of feminism, women's suffrage, in the 20th century, what it led up to the modern day feminism, which actually caused a ripple effect in modern society as a whole. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this scroll right here. Now, women and children first, according to one of the captains on the ship that was going down by the head after it struck the iceberg. Women and children first. They did not have enough lifeboats online to save everyone. And majority of the third class passengers lost their lives in a watery grave that is in North Atlantic. And right now, a Titanic ship is breaking apart very rapidly due to the, the excessive rust, bacteria that's eating at the steel and is collapsing left and right. They have the beautiful china, plates, toys, boots, you name it. All this stuff is in the ship down below the Atlantic. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to bring you the, I'm going to bring you the article, talk about post-feminism in the third wave with the Titanic. And we're going to talk about this. So, we're going to talk about this here. Now, this is going to blow your mind. So, the disaster happened on April 15th of 1912. So that's going to mark 111 years. In 3 days, it's going to mark 111 years since the sinking of Titanic. I say about 4 days. The Titanic hit the iceberg on April 14th of 1912. It went all the way to the bottom of the ocean around 2 to 3 in the morning, while the lifeboats going away from everybody screaming and begging to be saved from the frozen waters of the Atlantic. Anyways, you know, we're going to go ahead and get into the discussion. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this. So I'm going to make sure I bring this here to your attention here. So I need you to wait, and I'm going to come back. Can you please give me a moment, all right? Okay, I'm back again, so I finally fixed it. So this was published in 2017. It was marked the 105th anniversary to sinking of Titanic. So, the void sinking rapidly become a metaphor of man's hubris. Okay, the reason why it became a pop cultural phenomenon. Even James Cameron got involved. The story seemed tailor-made for moral gestures, grand talents of heroism, and deading, due to sweeping tragedies, and do that without any heart of an ocean nonsense. Well, anyways, part of it is historically true. The other part is just showing two lovers getting together and what have you. And anyways, so the disaster occurred in 1920, hit smack bang at the high point of suffrage and anti-suffrage movements on both sides of the Atlantic, and because it was traveling from UK to the US, it got both populations involved. Women's suffrage would be granted in the UK in 1918, okay, and the US by 19th Amendment in 1920. And this fueled the different wave of feminism all the way from the 1920s and first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, where we're at right now. And some men decided to go their own way. They just quit pursuing women or women. They just walked away from marriage because already the women are using the divorce laws to their favor to gain the man's resources or the money and stuff. It's been abused so many times. Many men are actually waking up and say, hey, why should I marry? I'm going to get taken to the cleaners. Some get married for alimony. Some get married for child support. Okay? Now, this fate of the Titanic already happened after the First World War, before the Second World War would get initiated. Okay? During that time frame, series of coups and overthrow were happening between 1912 to 1920. Okay? 1912, the ship embarked from UK to the United States, carrying a lot of souls on board. I think it's 1,500 souls on board, where she crashed in an iceberg. He was warned ahead that there was an iceberg in their very line sight. They ignored the warning. They boasted proudly against God. You see, They sing praises with their lips to the Most High God, but ignore the warning, so to speak. Now, this should be called Theology of Feminism and the Titanic. And I'm going to make this here apply to the modern world we live in now. Okay? Now, in 1917, I think it was, let's see, what was it? 1917, the Tsar of Russia got overthrown by the Bolsheviks. And then V.I. Lenin became Prime Minister of the brand new USSR in creation. The year after that, Britain granted women right to vote. 2 years later, the U.S. instituted 19th Amendments in 1920. Do you see all the timeline? Then the very people who control the central banks manipulated the money in Germany and make payments to other countries, devalued the Deutschmarks, and in chaos, a new leader was elected. He spoke like a politician to bring about changes by making ready for war in the 1930s. He was making ready for war. Then that unknown party took over Germany. Then they went on a invasion spree. But all this stuff here was planned behind the scenes, hidden from the public eyes. As I always say, connect the dots and the image will appear in your head. Notice that's Molly Brown, known as Margaret Brown. She was deemed the unsinkable Molly Brown. Okay. She ran for office in U.S. Senate years before the voyage would even use her fame afterward, discussing women's rights on an international platform. So to tie that up to right now, to sum this up right now, the effects of feminism from the 1920s to right now, it's all intertwined and tied together, so to speak. Those who forget history is doomed to repeat it again. I repeat, those who forget history is doomed to repeat it again. Those who change monuments and change street names will repeat history all over again. In Germany, when that one leader came to power, they changed the monuments, they changed the street names, they did everything under the sun that what we're doing right now in the United States. We're erecting monuments of criminals. We're changing street names to represent some other names or what have you. So why is this story I'm doing intertwined in today's video? Anyways, so everything is all intertwined. Now, we can learn from this sinking of Titanic. Women and children first. and men are disposable. And note, after the Titanic sank, there were rules and regulations drawn up between two countries to prevent this from happening. Unfortunately, during the 20th century, we had shipwrecks left and right. Then we had shipwrecks happening in the 21st century. After year 2000, we had shipwrecks. Then the captain got arrested. Unfortunately, no one died during the event. Okay? Now, the women in charge of first doctrine spread during the Titanic sinking. Okay? Then men being saved, although in the upper class. 50% of the women below decks died, opposed to 33% of first class ones. Ignited one of the biggest debates in the history of feminism. That gave it the blow. The ultra wealthy were saved, but the poorest ones, youngest, poorest ones, were disposed of, so to speak. Even though nowadays it's largely forgotten because nobody even studied the real history. Why did Titanic sink in 1912? Why? Think of this. There were key players on the ship that were on board of the Titanic that were en route to New York to stop the passage of the Federal Reserve Act to keep from enslaving humanity as a whole. Every time there's a war fought, it's a central bank war. It's a proxy war. Cost of human lives and misery and pain in a company like that. And, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and read down on this. Both suffragists and those who oppose the female equality seized on a disaster to prove their point. Things rapidly got very ugly. In 1912, the New York Times reported an argument between one of the reporters and a suffragist, in which suffragists apparently said that women are more valuable to the human race, should have been saved first, making sacrifice for men on board necessary rather than utterly heroic on chivalric. So, anyways. And so, allegedly, what happened was that, of course, opened a gigantic can of worms. Noted anarchist Emma Goldman, one of the founders of Goldman Sachs, would go on publish an editorial calling the behavior of women on board the ship pathetic because of cultural norms, declaring them weak, baby-like, in need of saving. She said that in her own words. Anti-suffragists took on the entire incident as proof that women were naturally weaker and required men to take care of them in a time of danger. Men sacrificing themselves such as way anti-suffrage public says was an act of bravery, but self-denial unequaled consideration more than proved that men needed to take care of women in the political sphere too. A Vice columnist added that proved that men internally is a protector of women, that women obeys men instinctively. That was the way the Bible designed by God. The men were obeyed instinctively, gave women the vote they shouldn't take care of themselves. For anti-suffragists, the situation on the Titanic would prove that gender roles were in it, that women could not be relied upon to make hard sacrifices. For that women are actually better off being protected, and that feminists who had accepted such chivalry were wanting to have their cake and eat it too. Now let's take it Let's take a quick fast forward to modern day. Now we have one of the fourth wave feminism that pushes women don't need men. After following this failed ideology funded by the CIA, funded by the globalists, funded by the Rockefellers, funded by the Morgans, it actually destabilized the civilian population, not made it better. Okay? So, to make this here heard, another side of the debate was equally chaotic and loud. Some pointed out women who were saved were overwhelmingly privileged and white. They were actually the stronghold of suffrage thinking in the first place. Others explored the rule of women and children first as a bit more thoroughly. It established when HMS Birkenhead ran aground in 1852, when female survivors from that disaster explained that being given preference didn't make them feel any more special or higher status. It is hard to describe the sensation of oppression which, removed from one mind knowing the utterly helplessly part of the ship living cargo had been deposited in this comparatively safely, as one woman said. And they combated the vulnerability argument, saying sharply, while men have saved women, women should have made sure there were enough lifeboats in the first place. So to link past feminism to modern feminism, it's like a snowball effect. So, whether or not women were more valuable became an angry point of the dispute. But the suffragists noted that whether or not the women were saved, they were still powerless. They had no voice in making and enforcing the laws on land or sea. One suffragist wrote that powerlessness was one of the biggest factors behind the death rates. A Just Chance of Life, wrote the suffragette lady Laura Aberconway to the Daily Mail in 1912. Is all the women in danger should also ask or take from men? Would they celebrate the women who gave up the privilege to stay on the ship? Charlotte Parkinson Gilman, a feminist activist, author of the Yellow Wallpaper, wrote, "We honor the women who waive this sex advantage and choose to die like brave, conscientious human beings." She didn't really care about the women, really. So how did that past feminism snowball into the modern feminism of today? Think about it. This is a very important topic that we need to discuss right now. Those who won popular opinion was clearly swinging in the way of the suffragists. One who would gain the right to vote in the next few years, but it would be a loud, exhausting right for both sides. Titanic, in its feminist aftermath, may have well influenced the shape of the debate in the future. The unexpected, often forgotten consequences of the tragedy. So, now, the feminism would be an easy target for women who did not feel that they benefit highly from the economic boom of the decade. Were working harder ever to get by, less time to enjoy the rewards of domestic and family life. They had it all made before the feminism came to the surface. This was heavily funded by the Marxist ideology. So, now, this is going to be a very, very, very bitter topic to discuss. Anyways, I'm done discussing this topic. Peace out to everyone who watches this.